In all of Frieren, many of the well-known characters lose their biological family. I say biological family because look at Fern, Stark, Himmel, Hyther. The list goes on and on. Not only are their parents gone due to warfare or other disastrous circumstances, but extended families are nowhere to be found. One of the biggest exceptions is to be determined when it comes to Yubel and her missing older sister, and like Gluck and this guy that lost their children. But yet again, where the hell are the parents in the story? The answers are Himmel, Hyther, Eisen, Frieren. But the focus on this video will be about the success of one particular godlike figure that raised a human child on a whim. But let's be real, no one raises an entire child on a whim. And who I am referring to is Ashi no Megami. Oh yeah, spoiler warning, but stay anyways because you can't help yourself. And before we continue, it's another day in the Frieren Manga hiatus. Yamada Kanehito and Abe Tsukasa have had too much bullshit. Because when they delivered the script to the Great Mage Serie, the Big Goddess, it said in a grave turn of events that no one could have foreseen. Everyone is in shock at the results as a human mage reveals themselves to be the one to yeet Serie.
不合格だ.
So we know that one of the biggest themes in Frieren is the adopted parental guardian. It is about teaching and raising an entire generation of good people that have unfortunately lost that natural connection in one's parents that guide you to become productive members of the world. That's the beauty of Frieren. A statue can symbolize the guidance and inspiration that one needs. It's like a 90s kid. Many kids that didn't have father figures looked up to famous TV dads. So this is probably in a way Kanehito's expression in giving humanity hope beyond having crappy circumstances like Fern, who was ready to jump off the cliff until our drunken priest, Hyther of the hero's party, took her in and helped pass her along to someone who would become her master and essentially her mother in Frieren. And that is where I can get to the core argument of this video in Serie being a great mother. She might actually go down as one of the greatest mothers in the world, given all of her flaws we can see at face value, like her seemingly arrogant personality, pride, and hubris. However, underneath is empathy, compassion, and level-headed decision-making with peace in mind. It is something she has over Frieren and many other characters because of the length of her existence since the time of Mythic. One can see all of her flaws, her harsh words on someone like Flamme, and since the condescending words and attitude towards those she helped raise seem less motherly. But one cannot deny how they all turned out. And one can see that Flamme saw right through her adopted mother's harsh words. She was even able to be frank and truthful to Serie when she brought along her apprentice in Frieren to tell her that she would be the one to defeat the Demon King, and questioned that Serie could never actually do it because she doesn't imagine herself living in peace. While there are clearly differences in how they see the world along with someone like Zinza in present day, the mere fact that she can visit her years later and have a respectful conversation are signs of a good parental figure. Frieren and Serie may dislike each other, but look at how the Great Mage Flamme turned out. Given Serie's tutelage and guardianship, she turned out to be humanity's biggest magical influence that turned the Empire into the biggest bastion of magical use. Even when Serie and Flamme were at odds with each other, she never once physically stopped what she was inspired to do. One can say that Serie just allowed it, even though she vehemently disapproved of it because she saw magic only for those that have talent for it. Instead, Flamme saw it as a field of flowers. There are two ways people can imagine magic in the world. Someone like Commander Reve sees it as a tool for power, killing, and destruction. Someone like Frieren and Flamme saw it as a way to create new wonderful things in the world that have yet to exist. And that is exciting. Like flipping pancakes perfectly, giving yourself nightmares, using whatever the shadow dragon horn thing is supposed to be used for, and getting freaky. Nothing was more apparent about who truly Serie is as a person when Frieren delivered Flamme's will to Serie, which led to her taking Frieren on a stroll to give Frieren insight into Flamme's childhood, and how in 1,000 years, the era of humans will arrive, and that the Demon King, or a human mage, will end up yeeting them. I'm pretty convinced that this panel will ultimately hold true, because in the Foundation Festival arc, that might be her time. Serie already acknowledged that Flamme had such vision and dreams as a child. Her ability to imagine a future where she could be the bringer of magic to humanity was something she herself never thought could happen, but Flamme achieved it. Given Serie's warped reality of what time is compared to a human's, maybe she thought it was something she never needed to address and brushed it off. Or, if it was something she deemed not right for the world, she could have destroyed the dreams of Flamme. But the most important decision happened, and it's the fact that she did not stop Flamme at all. I think we can all agree that for a good parent, while you may question a child's dreams, you don't necessarily need to kill the motivations behind it. You just need to put them in a position to allow them to see that their dreams may not work. But in Flamme's case, it worked. And as we can see with some of these other mages that don't have the ambition like Serie wants, she still allowed them to become her apprentice. While Serie denied and ripped up Flamme's request to take over her work in training the Empire's mages, the Imperial mages, Serie still knew the inevitable was coming and prepared for it, which led to her creating the Continental Magic Association roughly 50 years prior in present-day Frieren, a regulatory organization and a protection agency for the people, the common man. There is still a mystery behind why Serie chose then to appear on Earth to become a prominent figure, when she had centuries prior to do something like creating a regulatory body for magic. Check out my prior video about the Continental Magic Association. Although Serie's parenting style could cause resentment, like lots of resentment, like betraying her, I will acknowledge the betrayal conspiracy, as I have videos talking about potentially someone we might already know and yeeting and betraying Serie. There are also other theories like someone like a Grausam or another demon pulling the strings behind the scenes. Conspiracies aside, one can look at how all of our first class mages turned out. Even though Lernen attempted to yeet Frieren at one point, it was for her acceptance and clearly out of love for Serie taking care of him after the Empire yeeted him out of the Empire. Let's actually call that neutral for good parenting. Zinza recognizes Serie's role in a better world, since is one of the few mages that tries to live a life as a pacifist, in which I recently made a video about why it makes sense for Zinza to take over the Continental Magic Association one day. As magical knowledge progressively gets widespread and a form of regulation from humanity itself will always be needed. While there is clearly a mean streak in Zinza that has yet to manifest itself fully in the story, her goals and aspirations are those of peace. Like her take on Frieren, Fern, and even Ubel, she can decipher the good, the bad, and the crazy to make logical conclusions for the betterment of the situation. In one scene during the Golden Land arc, somewhat stepped out of line to correct Serie that transferring one of the most useful spells against curses with Frieren in Mista Zyla, the curse reversal spell, was a mistake. But Serie corrects her due to her hubris that she can just learn it back in like a century because she has forever time. It's one of those things that can ultimately yeet Serie in the Foundation Festival arc, and why I say this panel, and this panel here, is a good foreshadowing that it will actually be a human mage that yeets Serie and not a human warrior. This moment in Denken's flashback can be taken in many ways, like resentment from Sense's perspective, but it is from someone that ultimately cares about her master that she was willing to point out the obvious downside to such a useful spell to get out of a dangerous situation from a curse like against Macht's Golds. Ultimately, Sense becomes Serie's most trustworthy first class mage because she literally deploys her as a bodyguard in protection of her life in a situation where all of her prophetic dreams leads to one thing: her death. Along with the voice changing Falsh, one-arm Falsh, changing his voice to make it sound just like the Big Goddess. There is what Serie wants in accumulating talented mages, and apparently raising children on a whim to be ambitious and seek out power, but is actually the ones that go beyond Serie's imagination and choose a path that Serie herself cannot see. Her intuition is almost always correct. It is why her prophetic dream is so important, because she deems that as the eventual outcome. Not one time she could see herself beyond her death, except the time when she ran away and everyone else, one by one, got eliminated. However, she knows that Fern, Ubel, Megadane, Falsh, Sense, and probably even Lineal are all out of the norm, tendency breakers. Remember what Edel said back in the first class mage exam. Sense can control every single strand of her hair, meaning her ability to use her imagination is beyond most people's abilities to do so. Sense will not allow someone to imagine a future where Serie gets yeeted, even though that is only what Serie sees. That is why the combination of all the first class mages she brought along are so important, and by proxy, Frieren, Stark, and Gold TP. They are the ones she still chose to be apprentices and guide on their future endeavors. She may want to cast them aside as failures, but she never actually cast them aside. She still raised them from various ages and have them be productive members of the world, like when she sent Matilde and Ganao to ultimately take down Divine Revolte in the Northern Plateau. Once again, Sense becomes her most trustworthy apprentice. At least that is the assumption currently, and it is the reason why she brought along everyone that she could that clearly can imagine a future she cannot. So even if Serie passes away, she actually left a legacy from Flamme to the Continental Magic Association and the people that consist of it to continue the era of humans in a peaceful direction. As we can see from this panel, all the way to the Divine Revolte arc, all the way back to the first class mage exam, she is always looking at that flower, as she is disgusted by Flamme's passion about giving magic to the world. But in a way, it might be her finally accepting of Flamme's path. On the outside, she may show hubris, but clearly, during the conversation with the Emperor, she very much can be humble and make the best decisions beyond her own selfish mortality, because she prepares here for her own death, and especially mentions the mutual benefit of the Empire and the Continental Magic Association getting along and proceeding on without her being alive to see it continue. One more example of Serie having humanity and showing favor to her first class mages is during the Golden Land arc. She figures out with basically one question that Macht cannot undo Diegolds because he lacks the humanity to understand how to save people, because you have to imagine it. Each arc, from the first class mage exam to Divine Revolte to the Golden Land, and now the Foundation Festival storyline, shows who Serie is deep down. When she looks at Flamme's symbol of the flower to give magic to the world, it's not only Serie potentially accepting that Flamme might be right, but it is Serie who helped raise humanity to be where they are at with magic, and she allowed for it to take place even though she could have turned into the Great Mage the Witch and caused endless war to the world over magic. Let's just chalk that up as another theory for what the potential backstory of the Witch could be. A Serie-like character, but going chaotic. If the Great Mage the Witch parallels Serie's thought process in any way, it gives credence to probably why the Shadow Warriors want to yeet her to take out the possibility of another Meanest the Witch incident. But that's for another video. In the end, we can clearly see the downside to Serie's personality, but that is life of a parent or guardian. To live with your flaws, but still have to guide the future doing the best you can. Look at how many lives she contributed to that led to the Age of Humans and ultimately the defeat of the Demon King by proxy. Serie did not raise Flamme or ruled over her with an iron fist. She didn't crush Flamme and Zinsa's dreams. Even when she disagreed with them, she did what most good parents would do. She allowed them to be them and become humanity's most positive and prominent figures of all of history. And so even if she says on repeat that she raised Flamme on a whim, we can tell how proud of her she truly is.